unlimited access to his private jet. I think they're just really quite trying to sweeten the pot here, and I think we're seeing a lot of things here that maybe Peyton Manning's just like, yeah, I don't really need the money. I got my own jet. So we haven't seen anything for sure, but I'm with you for $20 million. I would definitely do it. Last prop bet, we saw that everybody in Vegas, as far as the bets go, says Nick Foles ends up in a trade with the Indianapolis Colts to be the quarterback for the 2020 season of the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I see them going after maybe a Phillip Rivers. There could be a possible – there's a small chance of a trade maybe to grab Dak Prescott, maybe even Matt Stafford. I think that's so far down on the list, Nick Foles. I think people make that connection because of his time with the Eagles. But I think if they're going to sit down and look at either Nick Foles or Jacoby Brissett, they're going to keep Jacoby Brissett, who's been in the fold for the last year or two. I would expect more than likely what's going to happen, if he's available at number 13, Jordan Love from Utah State will be drafted to the Colts, and they will keep Jacoby Brissett through his contract to start next year and let Jordan Love learn from underneath him and then roll from there.
Tony Donahue with the Tony D Podcast. Tony, I know we ran you over a couple minutes. My apologies. Where can people find your work in masterpieces, sir?
Yeah, Tony D Indy on Twitter, the Tony D Podcast on Spotify or Apple iTunes, and at On the Bubble Show, talk a little college hoops coming up here in about 15 minutes.
All right, Tony, we appreciate it, man. Have yourself a good weekend.
You too. Take care.
Tony Donahue, the Tony D Podcast, joins us, helping us break down some of this bubble watch stuff we got going on. Who's going to be in? We're 8 days away from getting our brackets together. So right now it's just me and you. So if you want to talk a little NCAA, March Madness, give me a call, 917-889-8516. Make sure you're also following us on social media at Twitter, and then just go to the Book of Faces and type in The Balance. You'll see us there, our logos there, and everything. So let's just kind of pick up where we left off at. So we're trying to get to all of these bubble teams if we can at all. I had to get some water. Needed some Aquaman. But let's move over to the SEC. Now, of course, we know number 9 Kentucky. I said number 9. I'm sorry. Probably in the top 9 is Kentucky. My apologies. Auburn and LSU. We know are secure fits for the SEC. But let's talk a little bit about Florida. The Gators picked up another quad win on Wednesday night, going into Athens, knocking off Georgia. They have a bunch of good wins this year. Auburn 27, LSU 32 at home, Xavier 41, Providence 44 on a neutral 30 by 32 points. So Florida has some work to do, even though they did a lot of work. I think Florida gets in, but they have to make a good showing this weekend and throughout the week. They have to make a good showing in the SEC tournament. We'll see what happens. They don't necessarily have to win to get in, but they need to take care of business and make that happen for Florida. Arkansas is another team that we're looking at on the bubble, if you will, for the SEC. So a lot of people say they're off the bubble, that they're in. Arkansas is 19-11 on the season with 7-10 record in the SEC after knocking off LSU at home on Wednesday night. They have a pair of quad 1 wins and 6-11 record against the top 2 quads, which really isn't that great. But the more important record is this: they are now 19-6 on the season with a healthy Isaiah Joe. Tell me, does that sound like an NBA guy waiting to happen? Can you just picture that? That's one of those names that, when introduced, just rolls off your tongue. But I don't think that'll be enough to get the Razorbacks onto the right side of the bubble. But I do think they'll get in. That's just my thoughts. A lot of people think they're still on the bubble, so we'll see. And so next on the bubble, though, let's talk a little bit about Tennessee. And since we're mentioning Tennessee, let's make sure that we give our thoughts and prayers to the tragic tornadoes that happened in Tornado. I think we're up to 35 deaths in the Nashville area from these tornadoes, and everybody knows I'm a big Clay Travis fan, and he had a thing that if you buy something from his store, he's going to give 100% of the profits to that. And he's raised a lot of money, and I did my part. I ordered a Kick the Coverage T-shirt, so certainly help support the people in Tennessee. And this is just a huge thing, and obviously way more important than basketball. But thoughts and prayers to Tennessee and the tornado victims there. When we talk about Tennessee, the basketball team, I guess it was too soon to entirely write Tennessee off, right? The Vols went into Rupp Arena on Tuesday night. He raced a 17-point second half deficit at the half and beat Kentucky by 14. That alone is not enough to get the Vols back on the right side of the bubble. But with the home game against Auburn coming up on Saturday, there's still a chance. Tennessee 17-13 on the season with a 2-9 record against quad one opponents and an 8-12 mark against top two quad opponents. Beat Auburn on Saturday, and they probably have a puncher's chance. So yeah, Tennessee, go out there and win it for the tornado victims, and beat Auburn. Get yourself in there and secure yourself a spot. We're 8 days away from the Selection Sunday, Bracket Sunday, Bracketology. And on Thursday, the brackets will begin to fall apart. I know at the office I'm heading up the bracket challenge. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And if you want to have a balanced bracket, by all means, just send us a direct message on Twitter and just say, hey, send me a bracket, and we'll make sure that we get that out there to you and get you signed up. There are a couple little miscellaneous things that we need. We're not going to sell your information or anything, but we are going to need your email address. So maybe just say, hey, send me a bracket. Here's my email address, and we'll sign you up and get you ready to go. Those brackets go relatively pretty fast. Usually by Monday, we're full. So if you want a bracket, I need to hear from you now. Feel like a telethon type thing. Remember the Jerry Lewis telethons? We need you to call right now and donate your money. Good cause, though. Good cause. I remember the Jerry Lewis telethon growing up. Do they still have that? I'm not sure. Not sure. I digress. Squirrel. Mississippi State. Let's talk a little bit about Mississippi State in the SEC. The Bulldogs lost at South Carolina on Tuesday, which was their last shot of getting a quad one win before the SEC tournament. They are currently sitting at 7-12 against the top two quads with just two quad one wins to go along with their pair of quad three losses. The only team they have beaten that is currently projected for the NCAA tournament is Florida. I say Mississippi State. Wah, 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 dancing the NIT. You know what? I should make jokes about the NIT. I use there every freaking year, almost, it seems like. And everybody knows I'm an IU guy. IU alumni, Indiana guy, Hoosiers. So we're praying that we have some good showing in the tournament, and that Indiana does not on the outside looking in, or they might be doing the NIT dance as well, as opposed to the big dance with the NCAA. The junior prom. South Carolina. Gamecocks picked up a win over Mississippi State, which improved them to 8-10 against the top two quads with a quad three loss and a quad four loss. The win over Kentucky continues to look better. The win at Virginia looks better too, but they still lost to Stetson at home, and that's not something that's going to go away. That's going to leave a mark, and I don't think South Carolina and the Gamecocks find themselves in. We talked a little bit about some of the other teams on the Bubble Watch earlier with Tony Donahue and Mo from the BS Sports Show. So we know that Gonzaga's probably in. We know that San Diego State's probably in. We know that St. Mary's is probably in. talk a little bit about Utah State, maybe being on the first 4 out. The Aggies have played their way into the final of the Mountain West tournament, which is the only the thing that I think that they can still do to still have a chance at large, I guess is what I'm saying. It'll be very close for the Aggies, very, very close. And if they lose, I still think Utah State needs to win an automatic bid to get any chances of getting into the big dance. The Aggies have not beaten a top 30 team this season and have only 2 top 85 wins, Florida and LSU on neutral courts, compared to 2 quad 3 losses. We'll see what happens there. Utah State, looking out on the bubble, looking in. Next Saturday, we will be dedicating 95.9% of the show to IndyCar and to March Madness. And by that time, we'll have a pretty good feel of who's in and who's not. And then we'll certainly, by the next show, we'll already have a couple rounds down. So we'll be knee deep in it, as they say. Let's talk about East Tennessee State and the other Tennessee again. Remembering those victims in the Tennessee tornadoes. The Buccaneers survived Western Carolina on Saturday, and will now head into the SoCon tournament as a regular season champ with 24-4. They win. They had a win at UNCG and a win at LSU, but they also have an ugly quad fall loss to Mercer. Who the hell is Mercer? Somebody tell me. Look it up. Somebody tell me who Mercer is. You can't lose to a team like Mercer at home and expect to get into the dance. It just can't happen that way. And that was the killer. And that may have been the nail in the final coffin, the final nail in the coffin for East Tennessee State to get into the big dance. So we'll stand by and we will see. My name's Tom Cosell, Presidente. Been a great show today. Been great having you along. One more team that we'll probably have a little time, just a moment or so to talk about here, and that's Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa is in serious trouble now. They have a tourniquet on. They're bleeding out. The Panthers lost to Drake by 21 points, and I'm not sure they did enough this season to be able to survive that loss. UNI also has just one quad 1 win at Colorado, and they beat South Carolina on a neutral court, and they are 5-3 against 2 top quads. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. Well, we're about out of time here. We're about out of time. Thanks to Mo for the BS Sports Show for joining us. First up, and if we were talking about Peyton Manning, $20 million being the next Monday Night Football host, thank you to Matthew Embury, WSBT up in South Bend, helping us begin our IndyCar coverage talk, because we, in 8 days, we roll into, in 80 days, we'll be here in Indianapolis at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Steve Wilson, Speedway Digest, joined us, talking Phoenix, talking about some stuff going on, some tie-ins between IndyCar and NASCAR. Jimmy Johnson doing some testing with McLaren. That leaves a big question, what's going to happen there as well. And so thank you also, Tony D of the Tony D Podcast. Make sure Tony Donahue of the Tony D Podcast. Make sure you check him out at Tony D. My name's Tom El Presidente. Don't drink and drive. It isn't cool. It's been great having you here. And for God's sakes, wash your hands, guys. Wash your hands. We don't want any of our listeners to be the next outbreak of the coronavirus. In all seriousness, let's take it serious, people. It's nothing to really joke about, but it's also nothing to get panicked about. Don't lock yourself in a room. Put yourself in a bubble. I'm out of here. Don't drink and drive. It isn't cool. Deuces.